Once revered as the liberators of oppressed nations, Africa's oldest ruling parties are now gathering in Johannesburg, not to celebrate victory, but to confront decline. From the ANC in South Africa to ZANU-PF in Zimbabwe and Frelimo in Mozambique, liberation movements that once embodied resistance and revolution are now under fire for corruption, authoritarianism, and disconnect from the people. The Johannesburg summit marks a pivotal moment, a chance for these aging giants to reflect on their fall from grace and the growing backlash from younger generations who see them as part of the problem, not the solution. With voters turning away, economies faltering, and legacies in crisis, this isn't just a summit. It's a warning shot. For the first time, these movements must reckon with uncomfortable truths. How did they go from being freedom fighters to power protectors? Are they willing to reform, or will they be remembered as the parties that freed their nations but failed their people? This explosive moment could redefine post-liberation politics across the continent. Once hailed as champions of freedom and the voice of the oppressed, Africa's liberation movements are now facing their most sobering reckoning yet, and it's happening right in the heart of Johannesburg. In an unprecedented summit of political heavyweights, activists, and legacy organizations, the founding giants of post-colonial governance are being forced to confront a brutal truth: their once glorious reputations are now tainted by decades of corruption, misrule, and a growing disconnect from the people they once vowed to serve. At the center of this extraordinary gathering are parties that were once symbols of resistance: South Africa's African National Congress, ANC, Zimbabwe's ZANU-PF, Mozambique's Frelimo, Angola's MPLA, and Tanzania's CCM. These organizations didn't merely rise to power, they were birthed from fire, exile, underground networks, and liberation wars. They ousted colonial rulers, inspired generations, and promised a future of dignity and equality. But now, with many of their nations languishing under economic collapse, political violence, elite capture, and deepening inequality, the question being asked openly in the summit halls is no longer about legacy, it's about survival. The Johannesburg summit, convened under the theme of liberation, legacy, and renewal, is anything but ceremonial. It is a crisis meeting dressed up as reflection. Behind the smiles, commemorative speeches, and exchanged embraces lies a somber mood. The organizers know it, the attendees know it, and so do the youth watching from the sidelines. The liberation movements are in trouble. In South Africa, the ANC is grappling with its worst electoral performance in history, having been forced into a fragile coalition government after the 2024 elections. Once unassailable in its dominance, it now finds itself negotiating power with former opposition parties, some of which have built their identities on the ANC's perceived failures. Corruption scandals, service delivery failures, and internal factional wars have hollowed out the ANC's moral authority. The once proud liberation banner is now tattered by state capture commissions, load-shedding crises, and the painful symbolism of a divided nation. ZANU-PF in Zimbabwe faces similar scrutiny. After decades of Robert Mugabe's increasingly authoritarian rule, the baton was passed to Emmerson Mnangagwa with promises of reform and recovery. But the hope quickly faded. The economy remains in shambles, inflation is brutal, dissent is criminalized, and a generation of Zimbabweans has grown up knowing more about queues and currency crashes than freedom and prosperity. While the ruling party still commands power, it does so through machinery, fear, and control, not inspiration. Mozambique's Frelimo, too, has drifted from its revolutionary roots. Despite the nation's resource wealth, particularly in gas and minerals, ordinary citizens remain trapped in poverty while elites grow richer. Insurgency in the Cabo Delgado region has exposed glaring gaps in governance and security, raising questions about whether the Liberation Party truly represents all Mozambicans, or just the privileged few. In Angola, the MPLA has struggled to shed the image of being a wartime machine repurposed for peacetime authoritarianism. Though the country has seen infrastructure development and economic partnerships, inequality and repression remain widespread. Human rights organizations have criticized the party for its crackdown on dissent, its concentration of power, and the lack of meaningful political pluralism. And in Tanzania, while the ruling CCM remains firmly in control, criticism is mounting over the erosion of democratic norms, media restrictions, and centralized power under the guise of national unity. The party's liberation history is often invoked, but younger generations are increasingly uninterested in history lessons. They want delivery, employment, and accountability. That is what makes the Johannesburg summit so significant. It is perhaps the first time that liberation movements have been forced to openly confront not just the enemies of the past, but the ghosts of their own governance. In private panels and roundtables, delegates are being asked uncomfortable questions. When did the rot begin? How did the protectors of the people become the new oppressors? Why are freedom songs now being sung by the opposition? Many of the attendees are older statesmen and women, veterans of the struggle, once jailed, exiled, or hunted for their beliefs. For them, the criticism stings deeply. But among the younger delegates, many of them scholars, activists, and youth league members, there is a sense of urgency. They are not here to protect legacy, they are here to reimagine it. One youth leader from Mozambique was overheard saying, "Our parents gave their lives for independence, but they did not die for this mess. If the party cannot fix itself, the people will." That sentiment echoes across borders, and across generations. The summit has also become a flashpoint for Pan-African introspection. It's not just about party politics, it's about the very nature of post-liberation governance. Did liberation movements mistake military victory for moral infallibility? Were constitutions built to protect power instead of citizens? And can parties born in secrecy and underground operations evolve into modern, accountable institutions? Adding weight to the discussions is the growing presence of opposition parties, civic movements, and international observers who are watching carefully. Many believe this summit is not just a reflection, it's a warning. The people are restless, and time is running out. Africa's liberation parties must decide whether they are willing to undergo painful transformation or risk becoming relics of a betrayed dream. It is not lost on anyone that this summit is taking place in South Africa, a country that remains the most economically advanced in the region, but also one of the most divided. The symbolism is heavy. Johannesburg's skyline, filled with high-rises and informal settlements, mirrors the contradictions facing the very parties now gathered to reflect on their role. For many ordinary citizens, this summit is a distant echo of promises long broken. For others, it's a final chance for the liberation parties to listen, learn, and adapt. Whether they do or not remains to be seen.